Welcome into GamecockAnthem.com's second preview of the year. South Carolina, Georgia, noon kickoff, the first game of the South Carolina Gamecocks SEC slate. Of course, Jason, always a big game when the Gamecocks are taking on Georgia. Always kind of sets the tone for South Carolina and for Georgia as well. Noon kickoff. Should be a hot one, but should be a good one. I was looking, I actually checked the weather right before we went on. Going to be about 86 degrees at kickoff, and just a game that is going to set the tone for the entire season for both teams. Jason, a big storyline coming in this one. Todd Grantham, the 3-4 defense, the pressure defense. We've seen people talk about it on the message boards all week long. What have you seen out of this 3-4 defense, first of all, when Georgia took on Louisiana Lafayette? And second of all, what is South Carolina going to have to do to beat it? Obviously, they've talked about Stephen Garcia trying to get him to make quick decisions all offseason long. We're going to find out if he can here at noon tomorrow.
Well, I think the 3-4 defense, and looking at some of the stuff they did against Louisiana Lafayette, it really allows Georgia to diversify their blitz packages. They're really able to mix up what they want to do on defense and disguise it, so it's harder for the opposing offense to get a feel from where they're coming from and what they're trying to do. It was successful against Louisiana Lafayette. I can only say that they're going to go up against a little bit tougher opponent in South Carolina. Now, as far as how South Carolina is going to approach that, South Carolina this year is more multiple than what they were last year when they played Georgia, and I think that's going to surprise Georgia just a little bit. The addition of players like Ace Sanders, guys who can make plays in space and are very quick and shifty. A guy like Marcus Lattimore, who is a big back but is very agile and is a very capable receiver out the backfield. Those guys give Steve Spurrier and the offense pressure releases this year that were not on the team last year. So I think it's going to be a very interesting battle that takes place on the field this Saturday. Kind of a battle of wills to see who can impose theirs on each other.
Yeah, Jason, Todd Grantham, a longtime NFL coach. He was with the Dallas Cowboys, was a defensive line coach there, now taking over as a defensive coordinator, obviously. It's going to be interesting to watch him and Coach Spurrier kind of match wits. I think that's a major key to this game. Who can kind of win that chess match between those two? And Spurrier even kind of said, he kind of hinted, he said, obviously Grantham, he respects Grantham, but at the same time he said it's a little bit different in the college game than the NFL game, and it sounded like Spurrier has complete confidence that his system can withstand and can beat this 3-4 defense of Todd Grantham. And I think a big key, we all know A.J. Green is going to miss, but the other A.J., South Carolina's A.J., Alshon Jeffrey, you mentioned Ace Sanders as well, but when they bring these pressure packages, a lot of times that means they're going to be matched up one-on-one on the outside. Alshon Jeffrey, one-on-one with pretty much any defensive back in the country, you feel pretty good about Alshon Jeffrey winning more battles than he's going to lose.
Absolutely. In looking at the Georgia defense, I think there's two things that really excite Coach Spurrier going into this game and give them cause for optimism. One, it is a brand new scheme. These guys did not run this last year. They have not recruited in the past to fit this scheme. It's always difficult to install a new scheme and have it work flawlessly to start the season. Secondly, everybody's been talking about the returning starters that Georgia has on offense coming into this game. It was at 10 coming in. It's down to 9 with the suspension of A.J. Green. But let's look at the other side of the ball. Georgia only comes into this game with 5 returning defensive starters, and I think that that's a big deal, especially installing a new scheme. And I think it goes a little bit deeper even when you look at who they lost. You look at the defensive line of scrimmage, where games are won and lost right there on the line of scrimmage. They lost 3 key contributors on the line of scrimmage. There are 2 starting defensive tackles in Cade Weston and Jeff Owens. And here's the kicker. They lost a guy by the name of Geno Atkins, who only started 3 games for them last year, but he was voted defensive MVP for the Georgia defense last year. That's a lot of talent. By the way, he was drafted in the 4th round by the Cincinnati Bengals. That's a lot of talent to lose right in the center of your defensive line. Step back from there, they lost weak side linebacker Rennie Curran, who, if I'm not mistaken, was the guy that knocked the pass down that was intended for Wesley Saunders that completed that great comeback last year between the hedges. In addition to Rennie Curran's loss, they lost a Palmetto State native, Prince Miller, at their starting cornerback position. And then on top of that, they lost both of their starting safeties in Brian Evans and Rashad Jones. So they lost an awful lot of experience and talent right up the core of their defense. Just a little bit further on that, Rashad Jones and Rennie Curran, when you add their total tackles up on the year last year, they were the top leading tacklers on the team. They totaled 203 tackles. The next four closest guys to them, if you add their totals up, only equaled 208. So that was a lot of tackles and productivity they lost just in those two guys. It'll be key early on to watch and see how South Carolina is making these young guys make reads. You can have all the talent in the world, but you only gain experience by playing on the field, and that's an advantage South Carolina's going to have Saturday with some of these new starters for Georgia.
Right, you talked about, of course, a transition to the 3-4. I think most on the Georgia side, I think it's been pretty a clean transition to the 3-4. But we've seen here at South Carolina, particularly I'm always reminded of the 2002 season when South Carolina was going to the Tampa 2, cover 2 defense, how this was the new age thing. This was the thing to do. Chris Kosh, I believe, was the defensive coordinator at the time. And, this was supposed to be the next big thing in college football at South Carolina. And we saw at the end of that season that if you don't have the guys to run a particular scheme, it really just doesn't quite work the way it's drawn up to work. And you mentioned defensive tackles. I think no bigger spot to look than D'Angelo Tyson, the starting nose guard for Georgia's defense. We've seen what a prototypical nose guard in a 3-4 defense looks like, but I don't think Georgia has that right now. I know they like DJ Tyson as a talent, as a player, but he's about 290, 295 at the most. He's not one of these big guys that can get in there and plug up the middle. So I think a major key will be, can those guys in the middle of South Carolina's offensive line, you're of course talking about Kevius Watkins, Terrence Campbell returning. He'll be in there at some point as a reserve. TJ Johnson at center, and then of course Garrett Chisholm. Can they get in there, push him around with one person? If TJ Johnson can push around D'Angelo Tyson himself, then that frees up the other guys to get to the next level. Right. So just a major key there for South Carolina. And of course, we've already touched on it a little bit, Jason. AJ Green, though, of course, everyone knows him from Summerville, South Carolina native. Kind of some differing opinions out there on the message boards for just how big of a loss this is for Georgia. But I don't even know if you can quite put into words just what it will mean for their offense. I think particularly when you consider Aaron Murray, everyone knows it's his first road SEC start, his first SEC start period. He loses his main safety valve, and South Carolina on defense gains the fact that they don't have to worry every play about where A.J. Green is or worry about A.J. Green getting deep over the top.
Sure. I think it's a big difference in terms of how South Carolina is going to approach attacking the Georgia offense. I think it's going to allow Coach Ellis to be a lot more aggressive than what he would have normally been if A.J. was out there on the field. It's going to allow them to send a lot more pressure to stop a Georgia team who's going to want to establish the run. I think it's also big that Chris Culliver is going to be rolled back into action here on Saturday, and just adds another dimension of experience to the secondary to shut down these guys for Georgia. They're going to try to come in and take A.J. Green's place. They're not going to be able to take his place, but they're going to try to.
Yeah, of course, you mentioned Chris Culliver. He is back. Some defensive players are not back. Of course, talking about injury here, Antonio Allen, he is basically an emergency option at Spur now. Coach Ellis Johnson said yesterday that Demario Jeffrey would probably play 65 snaps. He's going to be counted on. It is a noon game. You hope that those guys are able to stay hydrated, stay ready to play. We might even see Dion LaCorn or Blake Baxley in there at Spur if it comes down to that. And then, of course, Lottie Ajiboye, the defensive tackle, he will play, but he will be playing basically with one hand with the club on his other hand. And then Shaq Wilson, of course, the linebacker, he's out. They do get DJ Swearinger back. Kind of, I guess, good news and bad news there, Jason.
Yeah, I'll just make this quick. I think the Gamecocks are going to be all right depth-wise on Saturday. They got back some key players. It's good that Swearinger is going to be back. Like I said a minute ago, it's a big plus to have Culliver back, another physical corner that can come down and help support against the run. You know, we're here about the same time that game time is going to be going on right now. The temperature's not too bad. If it's like this, I think Gamecocks are going to be okay on Saturday.
And they've been practicing in this all off season. It's not like they're, you know, from Minnesota and having to come down here and play in this Columbia heat. They've been dealing with it over there, you know, all off season, all summer long, all spring long. So they know what the Columbia weather is going to be like. Jason, getting down to business here, South Carolina favored. Not very often they're favored over Georgia. A 3-point favorite right now. I think it's still at 3 right now, 3.5. But a major key to victory. And then, of course, we'll do our predictions. I'm going to go broad on this again. I think the major key to victory is just getting the ball out quickly, even if there are going to be times when the protection will break down. G.A. Mangus said yesterday, you know, the cool part about the first part of the season is that you never quite know what the other team's going to bring you because they've been saving stuff up. They've been devising stuff all off season. So we're going to see some new looks from Georgia. Georgia's going to see some new looks from South Carolina. So even when the protection breaks down, Stephen Garcia can't take the sack. He's got to find a way to get out of the pocket and throw the ball away, or to throw it at the feet of somebody, throw it in their belly, as Spurrier likes to say. So my major key to victory here is just to find a way to get rid of the ball, live for 2nd and 10 if you're Stephen Garcia.
Right. I guess my key to victory kind of goes hand in hand with what you're saying. I'm going to say that for South Carolina, a very important thing for them to do is to be able to establish the running game. If they do that, it's going to allow Garcia to be able to have more time back there to make those proper reads and decisions. By establishing a running game, it's going to make the Georgia defense have to respect that, have to stay back on their heels just a little bit, be a little bit more selective and thoughtful on how they're going to send these blitzes in just so they don't get burned. I think the running game and getting it established with Marcus Lattimore and Kenny Miles on Saturday is going to be a big deal and something you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, as you know, these blitzing schemes, it's kind of it can go either way. It's a double-edged sword.
Right.
If they're getting in the backfield, they're hitting Garcia, they're tipping passes, then it will be a long day for the South Carolina offense. On the other hand, if you're getting rid of the ball quick, you're finding the open guy, then you force them to just about get out of what they're trying to do. So, you know, both those things go hand in hand. I think you're right. And if South Carolina can do those two things, then there'll be a lot of happy South Carolina fans about 3:30 here Saturday. Now, prediction. Last week I said 34-17. I think you said 38-10. So you got me last week. You were closer than me. I think it's a South Carolina win. My gut has been saying 24-14 all week long. That kind of goes again. I feel like it's going to be a close game, maybe 24-20 or so. But I'm going to go with my gut on this one. I'm going to say 24-14. A good game still. South Carolina with a late field goal to pull it away and make it 24-14. Gamecocks win here in Columbia, South Carolina.
Oh, I have no doubts that this is going to be a good game. This is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight. In fact, I was looking at some of the past games that Georgia's played under Coach Rick since he's been here. They are 33-6 on the road since Coach Rick has been at Georgia. Make no mistake about it, they're going to come here and they're going to come to win. So South Carolina's going to have to come out ready to play this game. I just think this year that South Carolina holds the advantage in some of the key positions on the field, that being at quarterback, wide receiver. I think South Carolina has found a respectable running game talent-wise this year, and I think a big difference in this game is that South Carolina has the more established and experienced defense. And I think over the course of the game, that's going to bear itself out, and when it's all said and done, South Carolina is going to win this game by the score of about 27-20.
There it is, 27-20. He's Jason Ross. I say 24-14. I'm Wes Mitchell. Hope you enjoyed our Week 2 GamecockAnthem.com preview. South Carolina against the Georgia Bulldogs kicking off here at Williams-Brice Stadium at noon.